Welcome to our YouTube channel. Today, we bring you a story full of surprises and hidden angles that few people know about. Don't leave just yet. Just when you think you've figured it all out, there are fascinating and meaningful details waiting for you at the end of the video. Let's explore together and uncover the special message this video has for you. Are you ready? Let's get started. The Irish-Choctaw Friendship, 1847, is a tale deeply etched in the annals of human compassion, a story that defies boundaries of race, distance, and circumstance. It is an extraordinary episode born from unimaginable hardship and suffering, where the connection between two disparate peoples would forge a bond that still echoes across the generations. This is a story of the Choctaw Nation, one of the indigenous tribes of North America, who, despite having faced their own profound tragedy just a few years earlier, extended a hand of generosity across the Atlantic to aid the Irish during one of their darkest moments in history, the Great Potato Famine. In 1847, the Irish were grappling with a famine that was unlike anything they had ever experienced before. The blight, caused by a fungus-like organism known as Phytophthora infestans, had swept across Ireland with terrifying speed, decimating their primary source of sustenance, potatoes. The island, which had been heavily dependent on this crop, saw its agricultural lifeblood turn to rot, first blackening and then disintegrating, leaving fields barren and farmers destitute. The suffering was unimaginable. Fields that once thrived with the green promise of a harvest were now wastelands of despair and the proud. Irish people were reduced to scavengers in their own land, facing starvation at a massive scale. But it wasn't just the loss of a single crop that led to the devastation. The failure of the potato crop exposed the underlying tensions and inequities of a system dominated by absentee landlords and colonial rule. The British government's response, though initially well-intentioned, was woefully inadequate. Corn was imported to replace the failing potato, but this was not the solution many had hoped for. Corn was foreign to the Irish diet, and it came at a price that few could afford. Worse still, the food crisis became entangled in political and economic policies that exacerbated the suffering, leaving millions of Irish men, women, and children to fend for themselves. It was into this bleak landscape of desolation and despair that a glimmer of hope arrived from an unexpected source. A people thousands of miles away, on a continent most Irish had never seen or even heard of. The Choctaw Nation had recently endured their own dark chapter of suffering, the Trail of Tears. Forced from their ancestral lands in Mississippi and marched hundreds of miles to the plains of what is now Oklahoma, the Choctaw had lost thousands of their own to starvation, disease, and exhaustion. They knew firsthand the heartache of being displaced, of watching loved ones perish, and of enduring the callousness of an indifferent government. It was this shared experience of suffering that forged a connection between the Choctaw and the Irish, though the two peoples had never met. In the spring of 1847, after learning about the plight of the Irish through newspaper reports and word of mouth, the Choctaw gathered what little they had and made a donation of $170, equivalent to thousands of dollars in today's money. For the impoverished Choctaw, who had so little to give, this act of generosity was nothing short of remarkable. But their gesture was not simply about the amount. It was about the profound sense of empathy that transcended cultural and geographical divides. The gift from the Choctaw didn't go unnoticed in Ireland. News of their generosity spread, offering a rare moment of solace in the midst of the ongoing tragedy. To the Irish, the gesture was a lifeline, not only in terms of the material assistance it provided, but also as a powerful symbol of human solidarity. The Choctaw had reached across oceans and cultural barriers to offer aid to a people they had never known, purely out of a shared sense of suffering and kinship. It was a reminder that even in the most desperate of times, humanity could still shine through. As the years passed, the story of the Choctaw's gift became more than just an anecdote. It grew into a lasting legacy of friendship between the two peoples. In 1992, when the people of Ireland were called upon to help others in need, they did not forget the kindness shown to them by the Choctaw. When the Choctaw people faced challenges of their own due to natural disasters and hardship, Irish individuals and organizations reached out in return, offering their support and aid in recognition of that historic gift from so long ago. In 2017, to commemorate the 170th anniversary of the Choctaw donation, a sculpture titled Kindred Spirits was erected in Middleton, County Cork, Ireland. The sculpture, which consists of 9 large stainless steel feathers arranged in a circle, serves as a poignant reminder of the generosity of the Choctaw and the enduring bond that was forged between the Choctaw Nation and the Irish people. It is not just a monument to history, but a testament to the idea that compassion knows no borders, and that the human spirit can rise above even the most profound suffering. The Irish-Choctaw friendship remains one of the most remarkable examples of altruism in the face of adversity. It reminds us that while tragedy and hardship may be inevitable, so too are acts of kindness and solidarity that restore faith in humanity. The story serves as a beacon of hope and a powerful reminder that no matter how far apart we may be in geography or culture, the struggles we face are often universal. And in reaching out to help others, we can create bonds that last far beyond the moment. In the end, the Choctaws' gift to Ireland was about more than just money. It was a symbol of hope, of shared humanity, and of the idea that even in the darkest of times, we can find light in the kindness of others. It is a story that deserves to be told and retold, not only for the historical significance, but for the powerful lessons it imparts about empathy, generosity, and the connections that bind us all together as human beings. From there on, the British government's involvement in the Irish plight grew increasingly negligent, bordering on cruel indifference. The prevailing sentiment among the Protestant English elite was that the famine was divinely ordained, a punishment from God upon the Catholic Irish for their perceived sins. It was a belief steeped in religious prejudice, and it allowed the British government to justify its lack of meaningful intervention. Ireland, after all, had long served as a food exporter for the British Empire, and even in the depths of the Great Famine, this role did not cease. Grain, meat, butter, and other foodstuffs continued to flow from Irish ports to England and beyond, while millions of Irish men, women, and children perished from hunger. It was a grotesque paradox. Fields of food left Ireland's shores while the people of Ireland themselves starved. For those suffering in the bleak Irish countryside, it must have seemed like a betrayal on a monumental scale. The British government's policies, which prioritized economic interests over human lives, exacerbated the famine's toll. Soup kitchens were established in some areas, but they were overwhelmed by the sheer magnitude of the need. Workhouses, intended to offer refuge to the destitute, became overcrowded death. Traps where disease ran rampant. The limited aid provided was often conditional, requiring the Irish to abandon their land or convert to Protestantism to receive sustenance. These measures only deepened the sense of resentment and abandonment felt by the Irish population, who had long lived under British colonial rule but had never experienced such profound neglect. Meanwhile, the potato blight continued its relentless march across Ireland, year after year, wiping out the staple crop that so many depended upon for survival. It wasn't until 1852 that the potato crops finally began to recover, but by then, the damage was irreparable. Entire communities had been wiped out, villages lay abandoned, and the once vibrant Irish population had been decimated. Estimates of the death toll vary, but it is widely believed that at least 1 million Irish people perished as a result of the famine, either from starvation itself or from the diseases that thrived in the weakened and impoverished population. Another million were forced to flee their homeland, seeking refuge in distant lands. They boarded ships, often overcrowded and rife with disease, bound for the shores of North America, Australia, and Great Britain. These vessels became known as coffin ships due to the high mortality rates among passengers. Many did not survive the harrowing journey, but those who did landed in cities like New York, Boston, and Liverpool, forever altering the social and cultural landscape of these places. Yet even in their desperate search for new lives, the Irish encountered hostility and prejudice. In North America, particularly in the United States, Irish immigrants were met with suspicion and derision. "No Irish need apply" signs became a common sight in storefront windows, and many Irish were forced into menial labor, barely scraping by in overcrowded slums. But despite these hardships, the Irish clung to their resilience and their deep sense of community. They formed tight-knit neighborhoods, supported one another, and slowly but surely began to integrate into the fabric of their new homes. In time, they would become an indelible part of the societies they had once been excluded from. Back in Ireland, those who remained continued to face a grim reality. The social fabric of the nation had been irrevocably altered. The famine had broken not only the bodies of the Irish, but also their spirits. Families were torn apart, some never to be reunited. The emigration of millions of Irish people also sparked a significant demographic shift, draining Ireland of a large portion of its population. This mass exodus left many regions desolate, a shadow of their former selves. The psychological scars left by the famine would endure for generations, haunting the Irish people with memories of hunger, death, and abandonment. Within such a hostile environment, the Irish felt they had few true friends. The British government had failed them, and many other nations turned a blind eye to their suffering. But the Choctaw Nation's act of kindness, given amidst the backdrop of such overwhelming despair, shone like a beacon of hope. It was a rare, unexpected gesture of solidarity that resonated deeply with the Irish people, offering a sliver of comfort during their darkest hour. The Choctaw, who themselves had faced the horrors of displacement and death on the Trail of Tears, understood suffering in a way that transcended borders. Their donation, though modest in comparison to the scale of the famine, carried a weight far beyond its monetary value. It symbolized a bond of shared humanity, a recognition that even in the face of overwhelming hardship, kindness and empathy could still prevail. The Irish-Choctaw friendship, born out of the worst of times, has endured as a testament to the power of compassion. In a world that too often divides us by race, religion, and nationality, this friendship reminds us that we are all bound by the same fundamental experiences: loss, grief, hope, and resilience. In 1847, the Choctaw gave what little they had to help the Irish in their time of need. And in the years that followed, the Irish would remember this act of generosity with deep gratitude. Even today, the legacy of this friendship lives on, a reminder that in our darkest moments, it is often the smallest acts of kindness that carry the greatest light. And yet, despite being 4,000 miles away from Ireland, news of the terrible famine had somehow reached the hearts of the Choctaw Nation, a people whose own story was filled with hardship and survival. For approximately 1,800 years, the Choctaw had thrived in the American Southeast, having migrated from what is now Mexico and the western United States. Their journey brought them to the lush and fertile lands of the Mississippi River Valley, a region that would eventually become parts of modern-day Mississippi, Louisiana, and Alabama. Here, they established a sophisticated society built on the traditions, customs, and values that had sustained them for centuries. The Choctaw were a resilient people with a deep connection to their land and a strong sense of community. Their language, part of the Muskogean family of languages, was spoken with pride, binding them together through centuries of change and upheaval. The Choctaws' culture was richly matriarchal, a testament to their respect for the vital roles that women played within their tribe. Women were not merely caretakers, but crucial decision-makers, offering advice and guidance on matters of tribal importance. Although men held leadership positions, women were often consulted for their wisdom, ensuring that balance and fairness remained at the heart of the tribe's governance. This was a society where family bonds were revered, and marriage symbolized more than just a union between two people. It represented an alliance between families. In Choctaw culture, men would join their wife's family after marriage, a tradition that emphasized the importance of kinship and the influence of women in tribal life. Status within the Choctaw tribe was not gained through power or wealth, but through actions that benefited the entire community. To rise in esteem among the Choctaw people, one had to demonstrate selflessness, bravery, and a commitment to the well-being of others. It was this deep-seated value of communal responsibility that perhaps explains why, When the Choctaw learned of the horrors unfolding in Ireland, they felt compelled to act. Though they had little to spare, they gave what they could, not out of obligation, but out of a profound empathy born from their own history of suffering. Just a decade earlier, in 1831, the Choctaw had experienced the brutal injustice of forced relocation during what would become known as the Trail of Tears. Under the Indian Removal Act signed by President Andrew Jackson, the Choctaw, along with other Native American tribes, were forcibly removed from their ancestral lands and marched hundreds of miles to what is now Oklahoma. It was a harrowing journey, one that claimed the lives of thousands through starvation, exposure, and disease. The loss was incalculable, and the scars left on the Choctaw people were deep and enduring. They had been driven from the land that had sustained them for centuries, torn away from their homes, their traditions, and their way of life. Yet, despite this horrific ordeal, the Choctaw people did not allow bitterness to consume them. Instead, they maintained their spirit of generosity and resilience, traits that would come to define their remarkable response to the Irish famine. When the Choctaw heard about the suffering in Ireland, they must have seen a reflection of their own experience in the faces of the starving Irish. Like the Choctaw, the Irish were being crushed under the weight of colonial oppression, their land exploited, and their people left to die as governments turned a blind eye to their suffering. The Choctaw understood what it meant to be abandoned by those in power, to be left to fend for themselves in the face of unimaginable hardship. Perhaps it was this shared history of dispossession and injustice that moved them to take action. Despite their own poverty and the challenges they continued to face, the Choctaw gathered $170, an enormous sum for them at the time, and sent it across the ocean to help the Irish people. It was a remarkable gesture of solidarity, one that transcended borders and cultures. The Choctaw's act of kindness was not motivated by any hope of reward or recognition. It was a pure, selfless act of humanity, driven by the belief that when one community suffers, it is the responsibility of others to offer aid. In giving to the Irish, the Choctaw were honoring their own values that placed the well-being of the collective above individual gain, and that revered the idea of extending a helping hand to those in need. The significance of the Choctaw's donation goes beyond the financial aid it provided. It stands as a symbol of the power of empathy and the bonds that can be formed between peoples who, on the surface, might appear to have little in common. The Choctaw and the Irish were separated by vast oceans, different languages, and vastly different histories. And yet, their stories intersected at a moment of profound crisis. And in that moment, they became bound together by an act of compassion that has resonated through history. For the Irish, the Choctaw's donation was more than just a financial contribution. It was a lifeline of hope. In the midst of the famine, when it seemed like the world had turned its back on them, the Irish people received a message from across the Atlantic. You are not forgotten. Even in their darkest hour, there were those who saw their suffering and reached out to help. The Choctaw's gift reminded the Irish that compassion can come from the most unexpected places, and that even in the face of overwhelming adversity, humanity can shine through. The legacy of this extraordinary friendship endures to this day. The Choctaw and the Irish have maintained a bond of mutual respect and gratitude, celebrating the unique connection that was forged in the face of tragedy. In Ireland, the memory of the Choctaw's kindness is honored through various tributes and memorials, including the stunning Kindred Spirits sculpture in County Cork, which stands as a testament to the enduring power of empathy and solidarity. Likewise, the Irish have reciprocated this bond, offering aid to the Choctaw people in times of need, such as during the COVID-19 pandemic when donations poured in from Ireland to support the Choctaw Nation. This extraordinary act of generosity, born out of the shared experience of suffering, has created a lasting legacy, a legacy that continues to inspire people around the world to recognize the strength of compassion, the importance of solidarity, and the enduring power of kindness that transcends borders, cultures, and time. Thank you for taking the time to watch today's video. If you found this story interesting and meaningful, don't forget to hit like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss any exciting content coming up. Leave a comment to share your thoughts. We're eager to hear from you. See you in the upcoming videos with more unique and meaningful stories. Stay with us.